All righty, everyone. Thanks a lot for coming along. It's great to have such a packed audience. We've actually got a sellout here, so maybe a couple of spaces for walk-ins. But yes, it's great to see such an engaged number of people looking to find out a bit more about the future of crypto. And in this session, we're going to be delving into on-chain KYC, digital identity, and also move into DeFi and what can be done on decentralized financial technologies. And last but not least, we'll also be covering the Bitcoin Lightning network. So lots to cover in this 90-minute session, but we will be leaving a fair portion right at the end in which to cover your questions here from the audience. So it's your chance to ask our esteemed panel exactly what is going on, what is their take, what is their insight on the future of the industry, and they are going to be very, very well placed in which to field those questions. So in terms of the sponsor, I've got to talk a bit about the sponsor, ID Now. ID Now is a identity verification technology platform. Essentially, it allows our customers to access the European market in a AML-compliant manner. We onboard customers across a range of industries, including banking, gambling, and most importantly, crypto. So we cover some of the world's largest crypto exchanges and some of the world's largest financial institutions. And the reason for that is that we are a one-stop shop for onboarding customers. And it's actually one of the few that can actually cover the whole of the Eurozone and beyond. So it's a very easy way in which for our customers to achieve compliance across the jurisdictions that we cover. But less about that. Let's talk about what we're talking about today. In terms of where we are in the crypto industry, we've seen a lot of very, very bad events over the past year. We've seen the collapse of FTX. We've seen the collapse of Celsius, Terra Luna, Genesis. A lot of big names in the industry that at one stage were seen as unshakable. They were seen as cornerstones to the industry. They were seen as not only covering retail offerings, but also institutional offerings. And these institutional offerings brought a lot of clout to these crypto firms. Some of these firms had tens of billions of euros in assets under management, and they were beginning to develop the same sort of clout as you might expect from an asset manager or a bank. And yet here we are, and we're seeing a lot of pain in the industry. And this pain doesn't appear to be ending anytime soon. So that's the backdrop. And so it's good to open up with that for a bit of context, because crypto doesn't just see ups, it sees ups and downs. And there are a lot of very, very smart minds entering the industry, and those smart minds are building what some could argue is the future of the internet or the future of finance. And yet we are seeing uncertainty. And with uncertainty comes a lot of questions. So to begin with, I'll let the panelists introduce each of themselves because they're best placed to do that. We'll start with Stefan on the right.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jason, and hello everybody. Nice for having me. I'm Stefan Noller, CEO and founder of uBirch, and also of a service known as KYCT.xyz. So uBirch is a data certification and verification platform. Most of you know us already, because we're running the backend for the German Corona vaccination card. Everyone is forgetting that now gracefully, but that was a big proof for our infrastructure. And we are also offering identity verification services for an on-chain KYC solution backed by ID Now, in partnership with ID Now. But it's the first soul-bound KYC solution that works completely on-chain.
Thanks, Stefan. If we could pass it along. We've only got 2 microphones, so it's going to be a bit clunky, but you have to bear with us. Jan, you're next.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jason, and thanks for having me on the panel here, and thanks everybody for coming. My name is Jan Kühne. I'm heading sales at Alloy Capital. Probably not as familiar as other names here on the stage. Alloy, we are a venture-backed crypto venture from Berlin, and what we're doing basically is building a portfolio management solution and prime broker into the world of DeFi for institutional clients. Allowing institutional asset manager to engage with digital assets and DeFi in a very similar way they are accustomed with in traditional finance. That basically the 5-word pitch is that we are Aladdin for crypto. For those who are familiar with Aladdin, the BlackRock asset management platform in the TradFi world, and we want to strive to build something similar for digital assets and DeFi.
Cheers.
Hi everyone, my name is Anna Latschensky. Thanks for coming. I've been working for Michael Page for 10 years. I'm not sure if everybody knows Michael Page here because we're not really famous in crypto, but we're one of the leading recruitment agencies around the world with 10,000 people working for us. And I've been building the German IT recruitment here. And in 2020, I discovered crypto for myself, first as a trader, I guess, as most of us probably started this way. And I just deep dived into NFTs, DeFi, being a user myself. And at some point, I just figured it's crazy that no big recruitment agency is supporting this new flourishing industry. And I approached my managing directors if I can do this, and they agreed to it. So now I'm heading crypto recruitment and blockchain recruitment and Page Executive for Europe and beyond. And that's what I do, as well as I have a few side hustles. For instance, the Hanseatic Blockchain Institute. I'm board member there. For everybody who has a crypto startup or blockchain startup or company in Germany or operating on the German market, please approach me after this talk, because we are conducting a study together with the German government on crypto and blockchain adoption in Germany. It's the largest study of this kind so far. So if you're interested in participating, here I am. And also here's our community manager. Maybe you want to stand up, wave. So approach one of us for that. Yeah. And apart from that, I'm also together with Peter and Jan, we're all blockchains ambassadors. I think it's not so nice maybe to push another conference on this conference, but for people who are interested in crypto, feel free to also join us end of June for blockchains.
All right, so then I go last. I'm Peter. I'm actually a programmer who became an entrepreneur over the past 15 years. So founded my first company as a software development company and came to Berlin 8 years ago and joined a company builder that decided to go into the fintech space, which was my segue into finance industry, where I thought, okay, when I was at university, it was probably the subject that made the least fun to me, anything related to finance, banking, and so on. So once at that company builder, I found it really interesting to deep dive into the whole topic. And obviously, in the banking and finance industry, there's kind of like a lot still to digitize and to improve. Yeah, kind of sending money around the globe still doesn't work real time on a daily basis. So so I was able then to join Solaris Bank as a co-founder and CTO over there, built a technical platform, found blockchain and crypto in end of 2016, and wrapped my head around it. Also figuring out, okay, so if you can hold the bank in your pocket on your mobile phone with a non-custodial wallet, so where is banking going? So do we still need banks? And so I developed a strategy also to really outline the collaboration between banking as a service platform like Solaris Bank and crypto startups. And then after 3.5 years, I was looking for a new opportunity, also because I really love to build up stuff, and joined Börse Stuttgart as an MD and built up Börse Stuttgart Digital Exchange, where also Jan and me work together already. This was also fun, but still over the past years, we've discovered DeFi as, from my point of view, a really interesting platform to build financial services for the future. And therefore, we decided to start Unstoppable Finance and building Ultimate, which is a non-custodial wallet, which makes it very easy to use DeFi and to trade on decentralized platform. And with that product and also some new products and services that we're going to announce very soon, we're going to bring the whole decentralized infrastructure to the masses.
Thanks a lot. So What I will ask is that we've got a relatively long session here, but we've left a fairly sizable amount of time right at the end for questions. I do ask that you save your questions right at the end, unless you've got a super, super burning thing that has to be answered on the spot, then I'll take it. But other than that, please do save your questions for the last 20 or so minutes, and we will take the time to go through most of those if there is an opportunity. I'm going to keep looking at my phone. It's not that I'm on Twitter. I've just got a list of questions here. So, yeah, apologies in advance. But against the background, which was a very Nouriel Rubini, doom and gloom kind of thing, I'm not always so negative. Sometimes I am. I'm British. I'm quite negative from time to time. But from this, we are seeing a lot of bad things in crypto. And this is where I'm going to lead with my first question. So we have seen the demise of major crypto exchanges, major centralized platforms, and we've seen a lot of crypto projects falter over the past year. Anna, is this the end of crypto?
It would be funny if it would be. I mean, a nice, nice way to maybe have a last supper event here. No, I'm very, very convinced it's not the end. Actually, it's maybe more of a reassurance that crypto is on the right track and blockchain is on the right track. Because if we look more into detail, what actually collapsed or which players collapsed, it was mostly or practically almost only centralized or malicious players in the market. And by that, it actually reassured that we need DeFi and systems that are not dependent on certain authorities and are not centralized, because centralization is a risk in itself. So this is something that it actually proved once and for all that crypto is here to stay. And also these kinds of events actually spark a lot of innovation and improvements, because right after FTX, most other exchanges showed or published their proof of reserves, which was something they maybe were not that readily doing before, but they actually wanted to prove that they are stable and you can trust them. And so there was already a small improvement in that. Also, regulation is pushed for these events. And basically, if we look at the last couple of months, there were actually banks and the traditional players collapsing because of either stupid or malicious acts, different things that went wrong. And if 100-year-old banks can collapse, again, that's a sign that DeFi is on the rise. And it actually sparked a new interest in Bitcoin, among other things, while there was this spike again in price.
Yep, yeah, we'll pass it along. Yep.
Just one thing to add on that, which is all true. Another interesting part was to see how resilient DeFi as a technology it already is. I mean, DeFi summer is, I don't know, 4 years ago, 3 years ago only. And again, like in 21, we had the flash crash. All the protocols mainly went smoothly through. And again, in 22, we saw that the technology is really battle tested for a scenario you couldn't imagine in traditional finance.
Yeah, I would also like to highlight one of your points, really to stress that out, because I think also now going beyond finance and crypto, and also to one major development of last year was that we figured out that we're fully depending on kind of the gas which was delivered by Russians to Germany and to Europe, and so we kind of relied on one option, and if this one option breaks, so then we're fucked, because so we don't have alternatives. I think so. We've even seen beyond the finance industry, so that it's maybe worth thinking about kind of options and optionalities to decentralize things, to build things on more shoulders and more legs, to be really failover resistant. And kind of the internet, when it was invented, it was the core intention to have like an information network which probably might survive a nuclear strike, because it's decentralized and the nodes run like all across the world, and there will be just one line working to send information from A to B. And now really transporting that to the finance industry. So I think the finance industry is also centralized on many layers. So it's it's centralized around with the one currency that we have, so which works in a certain way. Then kind of the next layer, the infrastructure between. So there's like the SEPA rails, so which work in a certain way, and then we have the centralized institutes where we have to trust these centralized institutes, and usually regulation kicks in to make them trustworthy because they have to follow rules and audits and so on and so forth. But these where you have a human being and somebody who really wants to make like a benefit out of something, or who's maybe has criminal energy, this person will always find a way to manipulate, even if it's controlled. And therefore, I think also adding adding also your points all together, it's super interesting that there's now a technology where you can take the ownership for what you do. So every transaction you do is signed by you and by your private key and your digital signature. And I think it's also on the macro side. It's very interesting to see this infrastructure rising, and that we can now build a completely different financial service infrastructure for the future.
Oh, we got Anna again.
Sorry, could I add something on that?
Reading.
I absolutely agree on it, but I think the one thing that we still miss, of course, and that can't be stressed enough, is the UX UI aspect of it, because I really love the sovereignty aspect of it, but I think it just runs counter what we have experienced in the last 20 years, because from my personal feeling, it's like every major player, no matter whether it was finance or whether it was orientation or e-commerce, tries to make things easier for us and take responsibility out of our hands. So this is like the main chain of events. Nowadays you have Google Maps, you don't look at the map yourself anymore. If I'm without Google Maps, I'm lost, basically. And I guess most of us are. And the same about many other things. And I think this, going back to self-govern your own money and your own assets and everything, it's important. But I think if the UX UI won't improve, it will be hard to make it mainstream, because we are in a tunnel of making things easier for us.
Righty. So this all sounds very, very positive. Oh, go ahead. We'll have Stefan speak as well.
I would just like to add one little aspect, but I think it's interesting, because Peter just mentioned, every transaction has been signed and so on. You get full control. That's also what I love about DeFi and the Web3 and so on. But I don't want to create the impression here, that we just want to defend the industry and say everything is cool, it's going on. And if you look at what happened at FTX, exactly that was not the case. So the funds of users were transferred for alternative, uses without asking for their signature, because it was a centralized action, right? So it was not a DeFi case, I would say. Even if you look, very concrete on what happened, what made them, unstable, and so on. So it's very much, an argument for looking closer, and really embracing the decentralized DeFi world instead of, reinstalling centralized giants, that misbehave.
Perfect, yeah. For full disclosure, I was previously working at Celsius. I used to cover institutional sales, but I wasn't one of the bad actors, and I wouldn't put it in the same bucket as FTX, but it's a bit of context there too. So, okay, we've had some very, very interesting takes already from the panel. So it's all very positive, right? But if it's so positive, are we in mainstream adoption right now? Are institutions adopting DeFi? Peter, do you want to take that? You've had a little bit of institutional experience.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And so for a long time, I was saying that it's very difficult for institutions to adopt DeFi, because it's in the end built on this principle of having your wallet connected to something, and then use a financial service, for example, lend money or earn interest and so on. And you plug your wallet to it, and then you can start consume this financial service. And usually, so DeFi is more like from its architecture, leading towards how blockchain and smart contracts and all this technical infrastructure was originally intended to be built. So that the individuals are using something, and they're self-sovereign, and signing the transactions themselves. And I think for that reason, it's relatively difficult to adopt on the institutional side. Where I see potentially an angle in the future is that so once the wallet infrastructure and the signing infrastructure is really stable, it's brought to like everyone has a wallet in his or her pocket, then potentially we will see more financial services being offered on those rails, because in the end, what's DeFi about? It's about lending, it's about trading, it's about investing, and so on. It's the financial service that we see for the past 200 years, and but it's delivered on a different infrastructure. And I'm really, really curious how long it takes for the institutions to adopt this new technical infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me add on that, Peter. I mean, we've been at Börse Stuttgart Digital Exchange. I was within institutional sales and having this discussion with institutional clients. There are two aspects to it. The first is the institutional adoption of crypto and cryptocurrencies. And I think that question has been answered by now, that institutionals are moving into the asset class, and most of them are already there. I mean, there are lots of examples and milestones reached, and they are 2 or 3 years ago, like big corporates like Tesla and MicroStrategy and Mass Mutual investing 100 million and more into cryptocurrencies. Fidelity founded Fidelity Digital Assets, I think in 2020. BNY Mellon has a custodial service in crypto. Goldman Sachs last year had a
Mispronunciation.
Goldman Sachs.
It's okay. I would pronounce it Goldman Sachs as well.
Yeah. And we have another example is BlackRock integrating their asset management platform Aladdin in crypto and handing over basically the asset treasury of USDC is managed by BlackRock. So the institutional world is already heavily involved in crypto. Maybe from a German perspective, it's not that visible, but every bank in Germany is working on it. Commerzbank, Deutsche Bank, they are on the application process for crypto custody. The first retail services are coming from established banks, I think N26 last year together with Bitpanda. So we will see more and more of that. And then there's the second question with regard to DeFi. And here, obviously, there are some more questions to answer that. But from the conversation we have with institutional clients is that every larger organization in the financial world understands that the technology gives so much potential, not only from the cost-saving aspect, but from compliance aspects, from products you can build on top of that, from disintermediation of other partners in the industry to grab more of the value chain. Every institution is understand that and is building something in that regard. Obviously, it will take a little longer, and we can deep dive into that, what reasons there are, and basically what obstacles are in the way at the moment.
Wonderful. Some institutional interest in crypto after many years, which is good. Next, DeFi. DeFi, DeFi is seeing some interest, right? I mean, we were seeing significant volumes in the likes of Uniswap, PancakeSwap, all these different swaps, and lots of different functions which are available now in a decentralized manner. This is all great, but we're seeing most of our transaction volumes on centralized exchanges as of now. The likes of Binance, Coinbase. People are still gravitating towards those centralized platforms in order to get exposure to crypto, in order to convert between crypto, and even once they have exposure to crypto, they're still sticking with centralized exchanges. Why is that? Is there a future for DeFi? Is there actually going to ever be mainstream adoption of DeFi? Is it too complex, or do we see DeFi as something which is slowly gaining traction and will at some point overtake the volumes seen in CeFi?
Well, so I would slightly contradict, because there's days when Uniswap has the same or even more volume on the exchange than Coinbase, for example. And that happened a few times already. I don't know if this is even like long-term higher than on Coinbase. And I think this is quite a word how much volume is on those decentralized exchanges, and also the reason why is also quite interesting, because it's not only the retail trading, so that kind of like people connect their wallet and do like whatever day trading or long-term investments. It's also the possibility or the opportunity to integrate technically with a decentralized exchange, because so if people ask me what is the definition for DeFi from myself, I always say it's not about like that it's brought by decentralized autonomous organizations and that these teams are distributed across the globe. For me, it's more that the value chain is distributed and decentralized. This means that these protocols, so these DeFi services, are using each other. So, for example, the lending service that takes a collateral of a digital asset as a collateral, and needs to be able to sell this like at a certain point, kind of like to make sure that people get their money back, like who lent it out. Um, these protocols directly integrate with the smart contract of the decentralized exchange, and then kind of there's also this not only B2C angle, it's a little bit like a B2B angle, I would even say, that these protocols use each other and also then drive the volumes upwards. And so I think that's a very interesting aspect, so which also led the growth curve of the past years. And when it comes to the ease of use, so I totally agree. It's complicated. Also, but from my point of view, the main reason is that crypto and DeFi is still a niche and delivered by tech people or cryptographers to other cryptographers. So it's like the language on the websites and how things are explained is like very technical, and I think this distracts a lot of people. And so if we compare to the banking world, so if somebody of you uses Trade Republic to buy a Daimler stock, who of you knows what happens in the background? I assume 1% of the people here in the room, so kind of that there's whatever clear stream and like a centralized custody, and is there now paper stocks delivered somewhere, and how does this work, and so on. Nobody knows that. And I think this is maybe also one aspect that we need to keep in mind when it comes to the future of DeFi, because in the end there will be the tools that make it very easy to use, and in the end the user just wants to consume a service that's delivered by an application or by a provider, but the technicality and the complexity is hidden in the background.
Yeah, maybe from another perspective, also to add something from the recruiter side. In the last months, we've been conducting interviews with over 1,000 people, where they want to work, where they currently work, what interests them the most. And we were very surprised to see that while NFTs and metaverse is the topic where most beginners start with and people just start out to work in this sector, actually DeFi is the thing most people are interested in. And this is something we found interesting based on the data, because not that we didn't expect it to have any interest, but we didn't expect this kind of spike or extreme interest in DeFi compared to all other things that are out there in crypto and blockchain. So maybe this is also an indicator that there is interest, maybe not just from the user side, but also from people who work in the industry, what they want to build and what they care about.
Jan's itching.
I can tell you why, Anna. I mean, I've been in corporate banking. I've done Lombard loans, Wertpapier, security, collateralized loans. And if you look how this works at the banking side, you have, I don't know, 6 data silos where all the information's coming together overnight, and then you look in the next morning, you look at your screen if a margin call has to be done, and then you go to 5 other peoples in the organization, then you try to reach the client, and then you have to sell some assets or not. It's a messy process. And if you go to GitHub and look at Compound, and there are probably 1,200 lines of code, and a Lombard loan is written in Solidity JavaScript code, if you like. The beauty of it, without any intermediaries, an open source product, accessible for everybody with internet connection, that is so much more advanced than a Lombard loan handing out by a bank. So, I mean, if I would decide in which way to go, it's probably the crypto side, but you can tell by now.
So perhaps there are some elegant applications to DeFi that can allow institutional interest to mature over time, and also for people also to over time get exposure to DeFi. But what are the key benefits of DeFi? I mean, is one of it the lack of KYC, the lack of control? Is that why people are interested in DeFi? Stefan, I'd like you to take that.
Well, it's for sure one of the reasons I would say, that people like the, the philosophical concept, if you like, but also, being able to do transactions on an anonymous or pseudonymous level. That's for sure. I personally think, that it's indeed, Coinbase is just, if you look at it, it's another bank, with trading some other assets or so. The fascinating thing, maybe also why people came here and why they think about Web3 and DeFi and so on, is its nature. Is that suddenly the connecting ends. We the users have much more power than before, right? Because we have the signature, we own our private keys, we can do these transactions without having to ask someone or being on a custodian wallet or so. So I think it's a mixture of this anarchistic, being able to do anonymous transactions, maybe sometimes for good reason, I don't know, but also the belief in that power, that you get, when you have the feeling, oh, suddenly I'm I'm the endpoint that controls the whole process, the whole transaction sits in my wallet. So I think that's where the power is coming from. And by the way, that's also what I believe, when people will figure out why DeFi is better than centralized finance, is when we add other service layers, So if you think about carbon tokens or, everything that goes beyond the financial scope in the narrow sense, then suddenly it makes a lot more sense, that you can interact with a decentralized service and the token can be a part of it, paying for something, for example. But it can also add a layer which a traditional bank would never be able to offer. Basically, that you can trade other assets, like your carbon footprint, for example.
Go ahead.
One thought on that. I mean, obviously, not having a KYC within DeFi is a major advantage, but not because people don't like KYC because they are money laundering or accessing child pornography or whatever. It's just because it's annoying to do that, and everybody who does online marketing and has an KYC within that journey knows that that is the major conversion killer in that process. I mean, ID Now did a great job in that. We were market launching a robo-advisor in 2017, and the real innovation about robo-advisoring was not the asset management, it was an online KYC to be able to have an online onboarding for retail clients. That was what robo-advisor was all about. So. And that is a huge step from an offline KYC, but if you don't need the KYC at all, obviously the conversion doubles, triples, depending on the process.
Peter's got something to add.
Yeah, I also want to give another perspective also from different angle, because it sounds like, oh, there's no KYC, and yeah, so now we can do whatever the Wild West and whatever do crazy stuff. I think it's very important to stress that DeFi doesn't need to be KYC'd. So it's legal not to have KYC over there, because in the end, so there's like many AML laws and laws like in different jurisdictions, but also all the discussions like for the new ones, and none of them states that a non-custodial wallet needs to have an identity, and not even like after the TFR, like transfer of funds regulation, which has been voted 2 weeks ago, and also not the future AMLR, which is currently in trilogue in the European Union. So also the AMLR does not state that a non-custodial wallet needs to be identified. So therefore, I really want to stress that we're not doing illegal things here. So it's 100% legal. And maybe before I hand over to Stefan again, I think again coming back to the infrastructure, I think the interesting part is when it comes to DeFi as a financial service platform, kind of in the traditional world, we have the banks. They have core banking systems. They are connected to the national central banks, and then there's like the SEPA system. This is like all redundant infrastructure. So we have 1,800 banks in Germany and 4,000 something in Europe, and they all run on redundant infrastructure, having core banking systems and whatever different IT guidelines and compliance. And the beauty of blockchain and DeFi is that we have kind of one global core banking system, and that's a permissionless blockchain, Ethereum blockchain, Solana blockchain, you name it. And the whole account keeping, so kind of having an account for an individual natural person is handled with that. Also the all access management and so on. And also all the money remittance, be it like inside one jurisdiction, but also outside, like global money remittance. And now the financial service starts on top of that platform, kind of delivering, like Jan said, a loan or like an exchange and so on. And all this is delivered by 100% source code, like by a technical platform. And I think this already outlines the potential, but also kind of like bringing in identity and so on, and also like products that you guys are building. There's, I think, the opportunity to also streamline the whole process around kind of like being compliant in AML sense with like identities, KYC, and so on, but also really running a 100% automized technical infrastructure to run financial services.
Yeah, thank you. There's one obvious thing, I would want to add, when we're talking about KYC and DeFi and so on. ID Now has done indeed a great job, in making it as digital as possible, the traditional KYC process. But still, if you look at it, even in the full regulated scenarios, KYC is one of the most non-digital things you can see. And DeFi and Web3 and wallets and so on are, for my feeling, something like, a digital process on steroids, It's very digital, So very much power when you connect. You are in full control. You see all the, the tokens that are being used when you do this and that, and you see what you sign and so on. So of course, I would say one of the reasons why maybe people in DeFi don't like KYC is because it hasn't been presented in a DeFi fashion, right? So I think this one bit, indeed, I mean, that's the reason why we are taking care here, but also beyond that, it has to come as a DeFi, as a token, basically, It has to be an element in your wallet and so on. You don't want to, go out and do some, very Web2-ish or even worse process that is only, loosely related to your wallet transactions, if at all, that's not how people would like to have it. So I would argue, if we can offer KYC in a DeFi-ish fashion, with lots of control in the wallet, as a token, as a soulbound token, ideally, then I would expect people's, behavior to change. Not in every instance, and I don't want to push KYC where it's not needed, but I think we have to offer, something that is Web3-ish, for KYC.
I would also add one point to this, very, very good points. And I think especially us Germans have been pretty conservative all the time about data privacy and data compliance and so on. And imagine kind of like you have multiple bank accounts. So there's like multiple of data silos where also like where data can be lost, right? So like due to whatever security incident and so on and so forth. And the beauty of self-sovereign everything, yeah. So kind of like being self-sovereign on the account that you hold, on the transactions that you do, but also the identity that you hold, is that there's a potential setup that if we build this, I like that phrasing it, the building identity the Web3 way, offers us the opportunity to hold the data of this KYC or of this identity also in a self-sovereign way. So why does it have to live on a second server? Yeah, and so we kind of invented the GDPR as like a means to protect our data on foreign servers. And so if we're able to create a more self-sovereign kind of Web3 way of holding identity and proving that it's us doing something, potentially we don't need the GDPR anymore because we don't need to protect data on foreign servers anymore.
So, Peter, you alluded to DeFi generally being unregulated, and it's kind of like a free-for-all right now, where people get open access to these interesting platforms and services in a decentralized manner. But of course, there has been the Tornado Cash development, whereby the OFAC sanctioned Tornado Cash, which is a decentralized platform which was being used to a certain extent for money laundering and perhaps mixing of coins, and so OFAC felt the need to sanction Tornado Cash, which is fairly contentious, but perhaps that's alluding to perhaps the need for regulation for DeFi. What's your stance on that OFAC development? Do you think that's the complete wrong way in which regulatory agencies or authorities should be treating DeFi? Or was there some merit to the sanctions development?
Pretty good question. I think when it comes to regulation, this can happen on many layers, also in the whole stack. And with the OFAC discussion around Tornado Cash, we're now talking more about the infrastructure layer, not about the application layer. And so I would like to make this separation because it makes it a little bit more easy to understand when we talk about regulation. And so why am I against kind of what happened there with Tornado Cash? So first of all, as a disclaimer, so I also don't want whatever criminals use technology that we provide and so on and so forth. I'm totally against that. Still, there's in the crypto world this slight desire for having anonymous payments, because if we pay with cash, it's also anonymous. So there's the question how we can achieve that also in a technical way, because there should also be a right for anonymity, like in a democracy, because otherwise we're ending up in a completely different regime and setup, and how we live and how and what we do, and who can see what we do. So therefore, I think in general it's good to have anonymity. But like Tornado Cash ended up in this situation that kind of like processing transactions in the mixer, so that it was not possible to recognize where the money was going. So which was sanctioned by OFAC. And what happened there was that kind of let's say it in easy terms, that the miners who are operating the blockchains were kind of forced to exclude certain transactions from the block, which means that the Tornado Cash transactions have not been processed on this technical infrastructure. And so for me, this is a totally no-go, because imagine, so let's compare to the internet again. Let's imagine people were operating web servers and routers that block certain transactions. So what would be our vote? Would we like that? Probably not. So there's maybe states doing that, China, Iran. Okay, so I think we don't want to stand in a row with these countries doing sanctioning and also kind of like blocking transactions. And therefore, I'm a full kind of supporter of kind of putting the regulation on the application layer, because on the kind of like sanctioning transactions would lead nowhere, and would lead like into like a regime where we can't do things in the free way. We also don't block certain pictures of being stored on a hard drive. So I think regulation doesn't belong in the technical layer, but on the app layer. I think we have to see what is offered through DeFi. Is it a loan? Is there some consequence? Where is the risk? And then we have to treat the appropriate risks with certain regulations that really fit to the risk and solve it for the customer.
No. Oh, so Stefan wants to follow on. Yep.
Just one little, political remark. I think we should also be aware what is at stake, because there's at the moment there's regulation discussions in the US, in the EU. We just the MiCA directive just passed, and we have to be aware that, especially if the regulation has been put in by people who effectively don't understand what DeFi and Web3 and so on is about. There's a huge danger that it is actually going to be regulated to death, right? And I personally, and I think all of us, believe that we're talking about an infrastructure of the future, which is much beyond only another finance layer or another payment whatever system. And I think this tornado cash thing, relates a little bit because it opens the door, like every discussion about, that is started with child pornography in Germany, usually has some, other agenda, So and I think the danger is, that some regulation would come through that would make, for example, Europe a no-go place for crypto or for Web3, like it might happen in the US. And that could hurt our economy in the future a lot. That's what I believe this is all about, if you like.
But Stefan, so as of now, it's not generally the case that KYC is mandated for DeFi. I mean, if it were to be mandated for DeFi, would it kill off innovation? Would it prevent DeFi actually growing as it should and taking the rightful place in the decentralized economy?
Well, I'm very much with what Peter said on that, So I think it's a part of the beauty of DeFi, that anonymous transactions are an option. But I also believe that most people are honest and want to do transactions and do not have an issue to at some point reveal who they are or provide some assurance that the other side knows that the NFT I'm selling now is really coming from me and this kind of thing. So I also believe that we have to invent KYC in a much smarter way, which does not only mean make a token out of it, but in self-sovereign identity, you also have these beautiful concepts of a layered approach, so partial disclosure. Sometimes, if someone takes a copy, of my ID card, they get everything, maybe even my residential address, but maybe they just want to know whether I'm adult, right? And in a digital KYC process, you can do that, especially combined with some crypto technologies, partial disclosure. You can say, okay, you want to know that I'm adult. That's all you need to know. It can be a part of my KYC disclosure. Or you want to know, that I'm resident of city of Cologne, then I can disclose this, but I don't have to disclose anything beyond that. That's something a digital KYC process can provide in a very safe and self-sovereign way. And I think that's what we have to do is make it smarter and make it more like fitting different decentralized cases, but also leave the room. I wouldn't pledge for making KYC mandatory just because we offer it smart. The room for anonymous transaction where they are needed or of course also legal and so on should stay because it's the kind of the soul of DeFi in a sense lies in that, I would say.
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, and also adding, so we talked about the term self-sovereignty already quite a few times, and I think so when we talk about KYC, I think like anyone kind of accepted a bit like, okay, if it's about a financial service, you have to do KYC, but I think we also have to step a little bit back and think about, okay, so why are we doing that? So where's that coming from, and what's the foundation for it? And in the end, it's the AML laws where it's coming from, and so that kind of like KYC is a task that needs to be done in customer due diligence because so they're under on the AML laws they're so-called obliged entities, so verpflichtete, it's a German word, and these obliged persons have to do certain tasks, and this is usually financial institutions, but could also be notary offices and so on. So there's like a few of those, and the list of obliged entities is always kind of increased. So with the AMLR, so there's even more obliged entities introduced, and but usually these obliged entities are kind of are corporations. And so when thinking about self-sovereignty and the Web3 online identity that can live with my wallet that I control. We maybe also need to think about changing kind of the term of the obliged entity, because potentially the individual, so the natural person, also needs to become an obliged entity, performing certain actions. So, for example, making sure that the digital identity that I hold with my wallet, that it's always up to date, and that my residential address is the right one, and so on and so forth. There are certain tasks that financial institutions have to perform. Maybe we need to move these tasks then also to an individual, and of course then offering it in a very digital and very native way, so to make it very easy and performable. But yeah, so that's maybe also really important thinking about this, that also the way how we construct the AML laws, that we have to change that.
Wonderful. I mean, so, right now, we're in a post-merge world. Ethereum has moved from proof of work to proof of stake. And, with that, a lot of people were really hoping that gas fees are going to suddenly be a lot cheaper. And, if you buy a Bored Ape or a pixelated JPEG, you can get a nice deal, and you don't pay too much in gas. If you had a KYC layer on DeFi, is it going to be too costly to actually get in on DeFi transactions? Or is it going to be possible to have a relatively frictionless experience when you're an end user transacting on DeFi?
Yeah, it's a good question, Jason. First, I would like to, because you mentioned the merge, and we started the whole session, with these issues with FTX and so on. I think this was a great positive example of how strong this industry can be, technology-wise, because this was a super complex operation, that happened, that was prepared, 5 or even more years before, right? And I don't know who participated, in that phone conference. Can I get a hand, who watched the merge live? Okay, I was. I found it super fascinating, because if you know a little bit about the technology, and it was super risky, super complex, very decentralized, because it required no central department, had a project plan and forced people to do this and that. It was very much voluntary cooperation. And for me, it was a super strong example of, what this industry, what these tech people, can do, and how seamlessly it can go. And not to mention the carbon footprint, I think that's we should reiterate that every day. This was a great example of what we can do for the climate, because the carbon footprint literally imploded, by switching that button, by I don't know 99% or so, so that on the merge and to your question. I mean, many of the second layer things and so on, and the zero knowledge layers that are now emerging, are still focusing on making transactions fast and cheap, obviously, because that's also what DeFi is about, that we can do lots of transactions without paying more gas than for the actual asset. And I think, an identity or on-chain KYC, of course, has to go with that, so it has to be available on Ethereum, on the main layer, but also on the most prominent second layer chains. And I can announce that our product will be launched on Polygon next week, by the way. So hot news for this panel.
Breaking news.
It's exactly what we do, So we launched on Ethereum. It is a little bit expensive, but the right place, I would say, to start such a product. And yeah, but the gas prices and transaction speed is still too slow. So we will launch on Polygon in a few days, and other chains will follow. So that's my answer. We have to be on the second layer chains as well, I would say.
Okay. And so large institutions such as JP Morgan and other banking institutions are exploring layer 2s in order to transact some of their products. They're doing proofs of concepts, and some of these are proving to be quite promising. But I find it hard to believe the likes of JP Morgan are going to transact with anonymous parties on DeFi. And so in order for the adoption of DeFi by banking institutions and other regulated entities, will digital identity be required, or is there going to have to be some other mechanism that allows those institutions to transact on DeFi?
There are different ways to approach that, and they're already happening. What we see is that institutional clients look very deeply into permission pools, where basically you have a wide list of the participants in these pools, and some central institution in between basically doing these whitelisting. Whoever is offering, if it's a bank, they would then basically whitelist the participants in the pool, and every institution coming into the pool for whatever it is it liquid staking or some yield farming, they could be sure that the counterpart is KYC'd by that entity as well. That is something we see like Swarm Markets in Germany. I think they're BaFin regulated with that product, as Ondo and Maple and others. A lot of people are working on that. And there's a different approach, and that's probably JP Morgan with Onyx is doing, is it's coming to the tech layer that they don't have a public but a private blockchain. And then basically they really try to curtail and keep the clients in this sort of golden cage, where the tech infrastructure is run by that central entity, maybe bringing others onto it, so you have a set of validators validating the chain. I'm not that much convinced of it. I think an open source way is the better way to bring utilization onto the platform and innovation to the platform, but obviously that's closer to the DNA of a large institutional players.
Well, what I'd like to add, this is definitely part of an answer. The other is that you have the concept of a legal identity identifier in the European law already existing, and we're working on bringing that into the token space as well. And I want to advertise for the beauty of the concept of soul-bound tokens here, because the idea is that if you think of interacting with a corporation, typically, it's still a person, right? But it could be the managing director, and she is, signing off something. And in a tokenized identity wallet terms, this means you need one token that assures, that you're dealing with that corporation, so the legal identity identifier as a token, and then the KYC token of that manager. And maybe another token that represents the right to sign, and then you have these three tokens in that wallet, and suddenly you can do a full-blown legal transaction by a corporation. Or, I mean, if you deal with such a wallet, just by looking at the tokens, that it has been, registered as a legal entity and also is represented by one of the managing persons and so on, just by looking at the on-chain tokens, that represent these facts.
Yeah, and also to add one aspect on why we didn't see this institutional adoption of DeFi so quickly, and also in relation to the KYC and the identification, I think the way how the world works today is that there's like risk-adjusted measures, so that each institute needs to apply kind of when it comes to KYC compliance and so on. And in the end, the states and the governance don't make it too easy for banks that they really can follow certain like rules. Yeah, so it's not like you're allowed to do this and that and that and that and that, and then you really know what you have to do. So it's usually like, yeah, so please take care that you don't have too much risk in AML and like in whatever on your balance sheet and so on and so forth. But kind of the rules are not 100% clear, and this leads in the end to a system where kind of the people don't take so much risk, and they're incentivized to not take too much risk. And this is like in many times it's good, But when it comes to innovation, so you have to try out something, it's new, you are probably the first person or the first institution doing that, kind of like this incentivization is not there to try it out. And I think, so as I mentioned, DeFi is not illegal. Yeah, so there's no AML rule in the world pointing to it right now, saying like, hey, so you have to be KYC'd, otherwise it's illegal. So therefore, I think it's this missing risk appetite that makes it very difficult to adopt. And yeah, so I also want to stress this point that if each institute is running on their own permissioned blockchain and their own technology and so on and so forth, this is leading into a future infrastructure world like I mentioned earlier. If Germany, France, the US would have all their own internet with their own ISO OSI protocol stack and their own hardware and their own cables and protocols and so on, this just leads nowhere. And I think the institutions really need to learn to go open source, to build on top of open standards, and in the end also accept that the whole core banking system infrastructure is redundant, and you can't kind of like be better than others, because you can only send money as quick to the other bank as this other bank is capable. Yeah, so if they don't support SEPA Insta payments, you can't send it with SEPA Insta payments there. Each bank account has a certain amount of data, so you can't kind of like make it better than others because it wouldn't be compatible anymore. So therefore, so this commodity infrastructure should be public and should be open, and then all these institutions should focus and concentrate on, okay, how can we make financial services more global, more automated, and more frictionless. And I think like digital identity and all the technology stack that we talked about here for the past hour really would support that.
We'll move on to the next topic. Okay, so, right now we've been talking a lot about digital identity and how that's a theme as of now. There's not any regulatory requirement around the need for digital identity in DeFi. And we talked a bit about the institutional trends that could be viewed in DeFi. But on the consumer side, what are the major benefits for digital identity?
Well, first of all, Jason, I would want to stress, if I listened to how we spoke about that in the last 40 minutes and so on, and I think the KYC language, so the legal terms, anti-money laundering, obliged person, and so on, are somewhat dangerous, because if you look at the digital world, and we are at the OMR festival here and so on, people love this digital sphere, they love to do interactions, they love to represent themselves in a beautiful Twitter profile, which is identity, isn't it, right? It's to show, or even different versions of your identity. That's suddenly something you can do in the digital sphere. So I think we should, carefully try to frame it in a positive way. Yeah, being able to represent myself in a reliable manner online is something beautiful, right? And or we should at least try to make it as beautiful and self-controlled and self-sovereign as possible, and try to mention, money laundering. I know that the lawmaker, enforces us to care about that, and for good reason. It's a good thing, But I would like to highlight much more, that people are here, these 70K people are here because they love the digital sphere. They love to do business, but also represent themselves privately. And that means they are in need of ways of, securing their identity, not being part of a scam, or being able to prove someone who they want to sell something, a little piece of art, that they are who they claim who they are in a careful way, without disclosing where they live if it's not needed, and so on. So I think this is the core element of being online. Basically, is that you are able to represent yourself, and I wouldn't call it KYC in that sense, but being able to have measures and technologies that allow for this, and the self-sovereign concept for me is a super beautiful one. That very much carries the DNA of how this should look.
We're quickly running out of time, and we've only got about 5 to 10 minutes left of Peter. So I'll move on to our final topic, which is on the Bitcoin Lightning Network. So right now, we're seeing a lot of interest in the Lightning Network, and we're seeing a lot of buzz. El Salvador has adopted Bitcoin as legal tender, but the Lightning Network is what's really being used in El Salvador. Anna, why is the Lightning Network such a big deal?
Yeah. Oh, can you hear me? Okay. Why is it such a big deal? I guess it's because simply Bitcoin used to be a store of value, digital gold. That's what it was for many years, because nobody was really building much upon it. Ethereum was the chain to build for DeFi, NFTs, many other things, particularly in the last bull run. And with Bitcoin was like, okay, what are we going to do with this apart from storing our money in it? And Lightning Network is very important or crucial to changing that, because it actually would enable, or it gives us the chance to use Bitcoin for what it was promised to be, a peer-to-peer payment network. The problem with Bitcoin is scalability, because it can just do 7 transactions per second. So that's very, very low if you compare it to Visa, which could do up to 65,000 transactions on a good day. And it's not what will work out, because like if we go to a cafe and we buy, I don't know, I buy a muffin and I want to pay with my in Bitcoin or in sats. So how do I do this? Well, I have to wait for like 10 minutes to 60 minutes for this transaction to come through. I have to pay fees, which are too high. So it's not really usable at all. And what Bitcoin Lightning Network promises is really to make it usable, to make it possible to have up to 1 million transactions per second, which is incredible. And basically to do this with a fraction, mini fraction of a cost. So actually to make it usable specifically for micropayments, because that's actually at the center of it, and for payments that are done frequently. So for instance, if you have regular, I don't know, you have your favorite cafe, you go there every morning. So basically Lightning Network is a layer 2 kind of solution upon Bitcoin, not part of the Bitcoin blockchain itself, but it's a network upon it that allows to do all these transactions without putting congestion on the Bitcoin blockchain, which is the main advantage of it. Yeah. To sum it up.
Wonderful. I was planning on asking a few more questions on the Lightning Network, but because Peter needs to duck off, we'll move over to questions from the audience. Are there any questions arising either on on-chain identity, KYC, DeFi, Bitcoin? I think we've got a taker over here. Let me just pass this over.
What do you think about the centralization function or the platform risk coming from hardware like smartphones, semiconductors in the long run?
Yeah, well, so I think like so as I mentioned earlier, so everywhere where we have supply chains that rely on whatever, just a small amount of manufacturers or maybe sources where we got resources from and so on and so forth, this is always critical. Potentially, we're not always able to avoid that, right? So because like certain resources are only available somewhere in the world, and we can't change that so easily. Maybe this is also good to some extent, because if not all resources would be everywhere available, we maybe would have more wars and so on, because kind of like the limited resources and capabilities to build something and to kind of like get it out of the ground requires us to speak and to collaborate, and this is usually a good peacekeeper also for the future. And yeah, so in like decentralized networks and kind of like in that stack, probably I would have the biggest concerns when it comes to the mobile phone platforms, because so obviously there's Android, there's iOS, and there's not more than that, and also these app stores are permissioned systems, so it's very difficult to get through and get approval, and all these platforms also try to make more money, which is their task. They want to make money, earning with NFTs and so on. There was the discussion going on, so therefore I think we need to have more like more regulation for app stores as well, or we need to have way more than these two that we have right now. But maybe also saying, so I have to leave now the stage because I need to speak on Finance Forward as well. But thanks for listening and enjoy the further Q&A.
Hi. So earlier you were talking about whether KYC making mandatory would maybe harm the innovation in the DeFi space. And Stefan, you were saying that the beauty about the DeFi space is also the anonymity. I was wondering whether integrating like a zero knowledge proof for proving that you have conducted the KYC before actually accessing the DeFi platform and using it. Would this be a viable option?
Absolutely. I mean, that's basically, maybe I wasn't clear enough. That was basically what I was trying to say with putting more innovation in that space. So you don't have to fully disclose your identity. Obviously, for most of transactions, it's not required. And the digital technology has so much more option, especially if you combine it with strong crypto, like zero knowledge proofs, So you can even, not just proving that you're adult, you can prove, as a KYC has happened, I can provide that proof. You can check it without even disclosing anything else beyond the fact that I'm a person and I'm a KYC whatever person. That's what I meant, with the beauty of technology and innovating the space of identity, on-chain identity, if you like. So it can go from zero knowledge to partial disclosure. All versions can be offered based, by the way, on one ID now check, which gives you the base material, from your ID card, for example, and you just disclose what is needed for that specific transaction. And by the way, you can also maybe only disclose it in the session and then take it out of the equation again, right? That's all things we can do with digital technologies, and with analog passports. This is impossible.
Hello. My question actually goes to Anna. I think you find a brilliant way to be in a nascent industry. So it's quite this is an online marketing conference. So my question is, what are the top 3 skills that are at the moment for online marketing and also our professional sales in the blockchain and Web 3.0? And how relevant is that you actually have prior experience, because this is a new industry compared to 5 years ago?
Yeah, very good question, of course. Thank you very much. I would say that there are many sought after skills. Right now, of course, we also witnessed after FTX that there were, particularly on the marketing and BD side, many layoffs. So I have to admit that the last couple of 3-4 months, probably actually the tech profiles were more sought after. And also stablecoin expertise was also very sought after. Regarding marketing and sales, I think this will pick up much more the closer we come to the bull run phases again. Because how it's like when things like FTX hit, the first thing that people can get rid of is marketing and sales, simply because they are building and focusing more on the product development and so on. But still in terms of marketing and BD, because this used to be actually the main skill people were looking for, let's say up until November, December, because people were complaining that they can't find sales and marketing people who really understand blockchain tech, and this is a huge gap, and that's why they also started using us for that, because they said, okay, developers, we can find them ourselves, or lead CTOs, but chief sales officers who actually understand the stuff is really hard to find. So basically, I would say, depending on the area that you're interested in, whether it's DeFi, whether it's more metaverse, it depends really on the area. So having knowledge in the blockchain space targeted at this niche is important, I would say. It doesn't mean you have to be on the developer level. So of course, nobody for a BD person expects you to code smart contracts or anything like that. But understanding the, like, what is the layer 2, for instance, how does that relate to the layer 1, knowing about the developments, current situation, and this is something also important to keep up with the development, because so many things are happening in the space in a matter of days, weeks, months. Just to give an example, because we didn't have the time to talk about it, but the whole Bitcoin Lightning stuff is really picking up this narrative, as well as Bitcoin ordinals, meaning there are NFT-like things on Bitcoin now and smart contracts coming to Bitcoin. And there's BRC20 token standard now, which is launched in March, which is like 1.5 months ago. So it's like, if you don't educate yourself on the recent developments for 2 months, you're basically almost like, I don't want to say you're out, but it's really like you need to always keep up with what is happening, the current state of development. I think that is important. So keeping up with current state of development, having some insights or knowledge of how this whole thing works, what the purpose of things is important. And yeah, I would also say networking is important, because the industry is so small. I go to many conferences and it's really still small. If like 10 years, the last 10 years I went to IT conferences, you can't know everybody. It's already too big. In crypto and blockchain, who you know really helps you to get jobs, and therefore I can always suggest to go to conferences, to meet people in person, and this is important. And also being flexible, because crypto and blockchain is a space where it's not necessarily 9 to 5, and it's also stretched around time zones very often. So you should maybe be ready to work in this kind of environment that never sleeps. Yeah, but most people who work in this industry love this because they really care about it, about the content, and for them it's not work, it's actually pleasure. So that's how I live with this. But yeah, depends on what you like, but this is important, I think, to have this mindset.
If you get bored of crypto, you get bored of life.
I do have a question on stablecoins, so going back to the DeFi thing. I would be very interested in your opinion of the role of stablecoins in DeFi, and more importantly, what should they be backed with?
Sorry, I switched my line here. I had music on my ear, so I was the wrong line, yeah. No, I don't want to sing my answer here. I think stablecoin is probably the killer app in DeFi at the moment. If you look at central exchange, probably you will find maybe on the top 20 trades happening there, 1 or 2 against the fiat pair, all the others are against crypto, or crypto against stable. Why is it so important? I mean, if you transact on the fiat rails, it takes T+1, T+2 days. And in stable coins, in crypto, you can transact value within a minute. And in finality, it's settled. It's not just envisaged, there's no chargeback, nothing, it's settled. So that's why stable coins, I think, will be, we will see a lot of use cases in the institutional world and also in retail, that people will start paying stuff with USDC. And once upon a time, maybe we will have a stable coin in euro as well. What should be the backing of stable coins? Obviously, at the moment, the people that are pegged to US dollar or to euro. Are you alluding to the way the physical backing should be happen, or whether euro or US dollar should be the reference to it?
I'm wondering about the asset. So should it be like real currencies? Should it be like things which didn't work as well? For example, like we had the Terra Luna example.
We've seen experiments in algorithmic stablecoins, and so far they hadn't worked out. I think there are still people trying to sort of solve that equation. I don't see that happen actually, at least not in the near mid future. So it will be physical backed, and if you look how Circle as one example works, basically it's a money market fund on chain, and the DPAC of Circle, if you follow that, basically the only reason it DPAC because it was tied to the fiat rails for minting and redeeming Circle. And those things happen over the weekend, so Circle wasn't able to basically redeem for $1. So the market basically depacked Circle in anticipation of what might happen on Monday. And what happened on Monday, basically, when the fiat rail opened again, that they redeemed for $1 and everything was good. So I think it will be fiat backed. It could be cash backed as well. There are people building cash backed euro stable coins, but still again, the same equation here. I don't see algorithmic stable coins in the near future. Sorry to say.
Maybe also to add on that, because there was this question about skills and what kind of skills are interesting. Stablecoin related professionals have a good life, definitely. They're, like, at least according to the data that we gathered, among the highest salaries earned by people who really are deep in the stablecoin field. So maybe an interesting field to explore a career in. Yeah, just wanted to add that.
It's another topic, I promise. No more stablecoins. So I want to follow up, Stefan, on your example with the ID and only the partial information. What is important in your point of view on the governmental side? So what needs to happen that the technical things which you were already talking about can really take place in like real life?
Well, a lot, fortunately and unfortunately. For one, is if you look, KYC is a very much a regulated product, right? It's very much in laws and in specific laws in the countries and so on. And as I said earlier, it's a super non-digital concept so far, right? So if you do it, Jason, I think you would agree, you even have to keep stuff on file and your servers. It's a Web 1-ish kind of concept, if at all, right? So for some reasons, of course, because at the end of the day, it's always someone has to go to court and prove this or that, and then ideally you pull it out of the server and bring it into court, this kind of things. So I think the whole KYC thing has to be brought to the digital age, in a sense, also by the regulator, which is, and that's what I meant, fortunately, in a sense happening, So in the EU, we have this IDAS 2.0, the EU wallet basically coming, So there's already an existing law framework that will force member states to issue digital identities to all EU citizens. By the way, over the course of this year, so it's coming very soon, which has the potential to reshape that, right? Because suddenly you will get a digital ID in a kind of wallet. We will see how it exactly comes from the state for free, right? Including sandboxes around it, APIs, and the openness, that companies can adopt it and offer derived products and so on. So I think that alone has the power to reshape how we treat identity, but also how KYC has been treated, because suddenly everyone will have, by default, a digital ID, right? But the last thing I want to say, because I like this self-sovereign concept so much, is that for this, the lawmaker, has to get much more advanced by saying, at the moment it is, is KYC required? Yes or no? That's all of it, right? And in the future, we need something like, what level of KYC is required? What exact information should I provide? And only this will then be required because the digital technology allows for it, to be that. In the analog world, we only have our passport. It's impossible to, just provide the address where I'm living. But in a digital world, this is possible. And I think the regulator will adapt. By the way, because it's very GDPR friendly, right? That's also a thought, that crypto and representing your identity in a digital fashion is much more privacy friendly than providing it in the physical, because of that, because you can control what you disclose, and you can take it back and so update it maybe in some cases. And I think the lawmaker will because of the EU wallet and a couple of other reasons, will step by step come closer to that idea, that we will have these versions.
Thanks, Stefan. I think we've got enough time for one last question. Someone's already taken it.
Thank you very much. I think Germany performed really poorly when it comes to digital identification in general. Can you give like some explanation why that would work better blockchain-wise?
Well, for one, as I said, the EU is taking over now. By the way, not only for identity, so we will also see follow-up things like in healthcare and so on. The EU wallet is coming, and it will. I would predict that in 5 years we will see a lot of derived and other things in other sectors in the member countries, just because a predictable for free EU wallet is there, right? It will be a piece of innovation that spreads into many other products. And that this is also applying for Germany. So we can't run away from that because we are a member state. And I think this will just bring like external innovation into that space where we as Germany really messed it up. I think it's good luck for companies like ID Now, because that's how, why companies took over and did it much better. I hope that you will find ways to do that in the future too. But I think there's a lot of, from the outside innovation coming into our beautiful country, which will help a lot with that mess that we have.
Do you want? No? Okay, well, that's pretty much our time, everyone. What I will say is that we'll stick around for a few minutes in case you want to do any one-on-one questions, and we prefer a less open forum. So do introduce yourselves and let us know what you're working on. It'd be great to get an insight as to what the audience here has thought about the panel and all the topics that we've covered. But last but not least, let's have a round of applause for this great panel.